In the tumultuous years of 15th century England, a bitter struggle for power and control unfolded, famously known as the Wars of the Roses. This series of conflicts, which took place from 1455 to 1487, was characterized by intense rivalries between two noble houses, the House of Lancaster, represented by the Red Rose, and the House of York, represented by the White Rose. The seeds of this conflict were sown in the declining years of the reign of Henry VI, when political unrest and factional rivalries led to a power vacuum. The Wars of the Roses commenced with the Battle of St. Albans in 1455, where Richard, Duke of York, a prominent Yorkist figure, confronted King Henry VI, who was under the sway of the influential Lancastrian Queen, Margaret of Anjou. Although the Yorkists achieved an initial victory, the conflict spiraled into a cycle of battles, truces, and shifting alliances, as each side vied for dominance. The Yorkist cause was propelled by Richard, Duke of York, an ambitious and determined figure who aimed to claim the throne for himself. His son, Edward, Earl of March, later known as Edward IV, would ultimately prove to be a charismatic and successful military leader. Edward IV's defining moment came at the Battle of Towton in 1461, a brutal and decisive clash where the Yorkists secured a resounding victory over the Lancastrians. This triumph solidified Edward's claim to the throne, and he was subsequently crowned King of England. Edward IV's reign ushered in a period of relative stability, but his marriage to Elizabeth Woodville, a commoner, stirred discontent among the nobility who resented the influence of her family. In addition to navigating the complexities of his own court, Edward had to contend with internal conflicts within his family. His brothers, George, Duke of Clarence, and Richard, Duke of Gloucester, played pivotal roles in the Wars of the Roses. George initially supported Edward but later switched sides, while Richard would eventually become one of the most infamous figures of the era. However, the Lancastrians, led by the indomitable Margaret of Anjou and her son, Prince Edward, continued to resist the Yorkist regime. Their hopes suffered a severe blow at the Battle of Tewkesbury in 1471, where the Yorkists achieved a decisive victory. Prince Edward was slain on the battlefield, and Margaret was taken captive. With the Lancastrian cause all but extinguished, the Yorkists seemed to have emerged triumphant. Yet, tragedy struck the Yorkist camp in 1483 when Edward IV died unexpectedly, leaving behind his young son. Edward V. Richard, Duke of Gloucester, seized the opportunity to assert his own claim to the throne, citing the illegitimacy of Edward IV's marriage. Richard III's controversial reign further heightened tensions, exacerbating the divide between the factions and stoking resentments. The final act of the Wars of the Roses unfolded at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485. Henry Tudor, a Lancastrian exile who had sought refuge in France, returned to England with the support of discontented nobles and disaffected Yorkists. Henry, who would later become Henry VII, faced off against Richard III in a clash that would determine the fate of the warring houses. The battle was fierce, and victory hung in the balance until Richard III was slain. Henry Tudor emerged as the victor, marking the end of the Yorkist reign and the beginning of the Tudor dynasty. In an effort to unify the realm, Henry VII married Elizabeth of York, the daughter of Edward IV, symbolically uniting the Red and White Roses. This marriage aimed to reconcile the warring factions and bring stability to England. The Wars of the Roses had shattered the power of the nobility, reshaped the monarchy, and left a lasting impact on the country's history. The Wars of the Roses will forever be remembered as a tumultuous period of strife, characterized by fierce battles, shifting alliances, and personal rivalries. From the chaos of this conflict emerged a new era, under the Tudor dynasty, which would bring relative stability and lay the foundations for a new chapter in English history. The legacy of the Wars of the Roses serves as a reminder of the profound impact that power struggles and family rivalries can have on the destiny of nations.